Hi, and welcome everybody to another edition of the Winner's Circle Sports Betting Podcast right here on the Winner's Circle Sports Betting channel, sponsored by gamblersworld.com. It's a special edition. It's Friday, June 2nd. Doug Upstone is joining me, and we're going to be discussing the Stanley Cup Finals between the Florida Panthers and the Las Vegas Golden Knights. The series gets underway on Saturday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Time in Las Vegas. Doug, looking forward to this series. A lot of intrigue. I don't think a lot of people would have picked these two in the finals to begin the playoffs, but here we are.
Yeah, the Vegas actually had a shot, because they were if you go by the Western numbers, they were the number one seed, overall, which happened late in the season. But Florida, nope, not a chance. I think the last number 8 seed to get this far was Nashville in 2016, and I don't recall a lower seed, than them before that, and they've changed how they do stuff. But if you just took the old school way of how they did it, which was by just points, that's how it would be, from that standpoint. So it's a fascinating story, much like the Miami Heat and Denver, basically the same one at 1 versus 8 from that standpoint. So I think it's great. And I know that, probably TV ratings aren't going to be as high, considering these two markets, but it doesn't matter. You know what? Somebody's going to be crowned champion. That's all that matters. And we're here to discuss what's going to happen and what could go on in the series.
Looking forward to that as well. So, the Las Vegas Knights, second appearance in the Stanley Cup Finals. They must think it's easy. Since their existence, they've been in 3 conference finals and 2 Stanley Cup Finals. Spoiled. People in Las Vegas don't.
It tells you, though, how good their front office is, though. Yeah. I mean, right out of the box, now they did get a few breaks initially because they did change the rules about expansion teams, so they got a more favorable situation. But they made it work too.
Yeah. So that's not easy as an expansion franchise. The first year they were in as a franchise, they got to the finals. So. In any event, right now, game 1, let's start with game 1, Doug. How's that? Yep. So Las Vegas is a 130 money line favorite in game 1. The total is 5.5, which I found interesting, and I'm going to talk about the total. But let's hear what you have to say just about game 1 itself.
Well, I guess I'm gonna preface it by just bringing an overview. Okay, so not everybody's a hockey fans. Some people be watching this for the first time. Even somebody watching this video even is going to be watching this for the first time. So I'll just run down a couple of things about the teams. So first of all, I'll start with the forwards. So those are the offensive players. Okay, in this case, and despite the fact that there's a guy, Matthew Tkachuk for Florida, has been just. Matthew Tkachuk, to me, you can disagree with me on this one. He has been, in my opinion, more valuable to his team than Jimmy Butler has been to the Miami Heat.
I agree. Okay? I agree wholeheartedly. Okay, if I was to start a franchise right now, and we're just picking a positional player, not a goaltender, right? I would start the franchise with Tkachuk. Anyway, that's me.
Yeah. Okay, I'm glad we were on the same page on that one. So Tkachuk and then Barkov are 2 excellent players, maybe the 2 best forwards in there in this series. But the depth issue. Now, both teams have had 15 different players score altogether, so that's tremendous. That's just across the board scoring. But Vegas has a deeper group of forwards just overall. Now, it hasn't hurt Florida in any way because they've gotten lots of other contributions. But I think from that standpoint, I'm going to say Vegas is stronger there. I'm going to say Vegas is also stronger on the defensive end. Okay, I'm just talking about defensemen. I'm not talking about goaltender, because I think there's, again, more depth there. Now, goaltender Bobrovsky, he's been fantastic. I think 11-1. I think he is, with a save percentage of almost 9.4, just overall in the series. So he's just been lights out. Now, Aiden Hill's been very good, but man, he's been excellent. Special teams. Okay, there's penalties that come up. What happened? Florida definitely has an advantage. They have an excellent power play, and the Vegas defense or penalty killers have not been good. So that's one area definitely that they can take advantage of from that standpoint. And I'll have one other thing to cover when we get a little further, because I want to keep talking the whole time. But that just gives people kind of an overview as to kind of how to look at the series, the strengths and weaknesses of some of the teams.
Yeah, these teams met twice this year. Aiden Hill started both games, and he was fantastic in the two games. 76, he stopped 77 of 81 shots, which is over a 95.95 save percentage. Aiden Hill's been good in the playoffs too. I know Bobrovsky's been tremendous, but Aiden Hill quietly, he's got a 935. What are we here? 937 save percentage. 11 games played, including 9 starts, a 937. And Bobrovsky, just like Doug pointed out, 14 games played in the postseason, including 13 starts with a 935 save percentage. So we got a couple stellar goaltenders that are red hot right now. Yes. And usually when we get to the Stanley Cup Finals, Doug, that's usually the case, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, invariably, it's with rare exception that you could overcome a goaltender not playing well. There were some of the times in the old days with Gretzky, that they got in a lot of shootout, high scoring games, and that was partly the fault of the defense, giving up goals, not necessarily the goaltender. But by and large, yeah, if you don't have a good goaltender going into the finals, you're probably going to be in trouble.
Yeah, and you mentioned the special teams, and specifically Las Vegas penalty killing versus Florida's power play. The Panthers' power play is clicking at a 27 percentile during the playoffs, while Las Vegas, terrible. They've killed off just little over 62% of their man advantages against them. So distinct advantage, like Doug pointed out already, to Florida in that specific area. And then we get into the home and away splits. Here, this Florida team, 8 straight wins on the road, Doug. That's hard to do at this time of year.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just been phenomenal, and and you've watched the games. The most interesting aspect to me about what they've done is that they give up a goal and they fall behind, and literally within 2 minutes, they've tied the score.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, it's just been immediate, and so it just and as to why, one thing to look for in this series, and this is a key aspect, it'll be game one and the entire series. Where they have thrived is, so you got in the offensive zone, you got the 2 circles, okay?
Yeah.
And then where the dots are in the circles, they keep the puck, or they try to keep the puck between the dots and then below the dots. Yeah. So in front, they got more traffic in front, where you can adjust shots, okay, for goals. And that's really been their whole key. And it's been amazing how they've been able to do it, especially when you consider how their regular season was.
Yeah, I mean, the regular season. Here's the thing. We were talking about past playoff history and wondering what was the lowest seed to ever win the Stanley Cup. And as we know, Doug, we discussed off air, the format has changed so many times. It's hard to pinpoint. It's a great question on your part, and a great point if we could have found the answer to it. Folks, you out there, if you have the answer to that, please feel free to comment in the comment section, because you're enlightening both of us. But the thing is, with Florida, 92 points during the regular season, there's years where they wouldn't have made the playoffs in either conference with 92 points, and they made the playoffs by 1 point. And like Doug told me many weeks ago, when I pissed and moaned about Buffalo missing by 1 point under Florida, he said, you know what? How'd you like to be a Pittsburgh fan? All he needed to do is beat Chicago at home in the final day of the regular season, and you lost. So talk about eating your heart out. A couple teams that barely missed, but give the Panthers credit. There's nothing. Oh, listen, there's nothing etched in stone that would say that if Buffalo or Pittsburgh got there, they would have a similar run in Florida. I thoroughly believe that not to be the case, especially Florida's an experienced team. Buffalo is so young, and Pittsburgh is they're just getting old. I think they aged out, Doug, and it's time for them to start slowly tearing it down and building it up. So, but let's get to the game one pick to start, and then we'll go to the series pick, Doug. Again, Florida minus 130, and the total in this game is 5.5.
Here's how I'm going to look at the. I'm going to give a impression of the series and then explain what I mean.
Okay.
Is I'm looking at the first four games. I don't see either team that has the home ice advantage winning both games. Okay, I just don't. I think that both teams have shown that they can win on the road. Neither team is actually great at home. Okay, for the entire season. Now, Florida's been hot of late, but I think Vegas has enough different aspects where they can throw that off. So what I'm going to do for game one, Ross, I'm going to take the underdog in this one. I'm going to take Florida, but I'm going to take it as a smaller play with the idea if that ends up being the case, then I'm going to go bigger, okay, on Vegas in game two, or bigger on Florida in game two. Okay,
Okay.
so that's my rationale and that's my pick
Well,
for game one.
explain that further because I'm a little confused by that. And
Okay,
I know
all right.
you've always had this system, and share it a little, be a little more clear as to what you're
Sure,
referring to
sure.
for
Okay,
the
so
audience.
what I'm looking for. So if I'm saying that there are two teams are likely to split the first two games.
Right.
So how do you determine what's what? So I'm gonna like say I like the underdog to win one of these games. So I'm gonna take them right off the bat. But in terms of other than quote unquote flat betting, which means betting the same amount on every game, is that I'm just going to take a play like basically like
Small.
a 1 unit play on Florida for game
Gotcha.
one. So then in game two, okay, no matter the outcome, I'm looking for the team that didn't win game one to win game two. But now I'm going to make it a larger unit play based
Gotcha.
on that.
Gotcha. Very good. I mean, and again, it's all predicated on this series going back to Florida 1-1. And I think there's a very good chance of that occurring. So there you go. So Doug is basically telling you folks he's going to take the underdog in the Florida Panthers in game one at plus 110. And then if they win game one, meaning Florida, then he's going to come back with Las Vegas in game two at a larger amount. So he's starting with a conservative bet in game one on the underdog. If the underdog wins, he's coming back with either a big bet on Vegas in game two, or he's going to come back once again with Florida in game two if they lose game one, but at a bigger bet. So
Yep.
it's a system that he's been telling me about for years. I've followed him, and it's very successful. I mean, there you go. And that's why he's one of the best handicappers and has been for over the last NHL handicappers, that is, over the last 2 decades. Good handicapper, great handicapper overall. But my recollection of Doug, because I don't do a lot of NHL until the playoffs, is even during the regular season, he's got it together when it comes to the NHL. And you can find Doug over at DocSports.com throughout the Stanley Cup Finals. He'll have picks, I would assume, every game at this time of year. I can't speak for him, but he'll go further in depth and tell you what he'll have coming up later in the show. I'm going to go with the underdog, the under 5.5. Here's the thing. I know we think alike in this regard. We were talking about the series price and how strange it was to see Las Vegas at just minus 120 to win the series. And we're going to talk about that later, considering they're playing a number 8 seed. But the two regular season meetings between these clubs both had totals of 6.5. Since Las Vegas entered the NHL, they all 7 meetings between these teams have had totals of 6 or higher, between 6 and 7. Most fell in the area of 6.5, like the 2 games this year. Yet here we are at 5.5. Well, we all know, if you follow the NHL, I should say, and for those of you who don't, I mean, we're trying to enlighten you a little bit here. The checking gets much tighter at playoff time. The scores tend to be much lower. Not always, but that is the general consensus of thought at this time of year. So, again, Adin Hill has been terrific. I just touched upon that. 9 starts, 2 relief appearances, a 937 in the playoffs. Doug touched upon Bobrovsky and how great he's played. 1 relief appearance and 13 starts, a 935 save percentage. Adin Hill, like I just touched upon, 2 games versus Florida this year stopped 77 of 81 shots, which is a .951 save percentage. Florida has played 5-0 to the under in their last 5 on the road, and they've gone 8-1 to the under in their last 9 overall. And during that 9-game stretch, they allowed 2 goals or fewer on 8 of those occasions, which played right in part to those low-scoring affairs. I'm going to go under 5.5 in game 1, and Doug is going to take the Florida Panthers plus 100 in game 1 on the money line. And again, folks, repeating again, if Florida wins game 1 and cashes for Doug, he's coming back with Las Vegas as a bigger bet in game 2. If Florida loses game 1, he's coming back again with Florida as a bigger bet in game 2. He started conservative, and then based on the result of game 1, and whoever, let's put it this way, whoever loses game 1, he's coming back with them in game 2 and making a larger wager in game 2 than he did in game 1. So there you have it. Those are our game selections. Now let's look at the series price. We're looking at, actually, I take that back. Florida's plus 110 in game 1. I said 100. Not giving Doug his due. We're going to give him an extra 10 cents. Now we're going to give him. I just made a mistake when I recited the line. So now we're going to look at the series price. Big thing. We talked about this yesterday off air, Doug, how strange it was to look at this series price and see a number 8 seed like Florida, who barely made the playoffs. We just touched upon all that. We're not going to rehash that again. But here they are as even money to win the series in the Stanley Cup Finals against a team that's been to the conference finals 3 of the last 5 years and the Stanley Cup Finals 2 of the last 5 years. What do you make of it, Doug?
I think it still seems strange, but I think, you just have to take a step back and look at it realistically. I mean, the Florida, you have to just dismiss the entire regular season, because they have proven by winning 11 of their last 12 how good they are. Okay, they beat Boston down 3-1. Came back, beat Toronto, and I'm forgetting. And they just swept Carolina. Yeah. Okay, I mean, I don't know how you want to look at it. I mean, that's
those are 3 fabulous clubs too, right?
It really is, yeah. And I mean, Boston had the greatest regular season ever. And they went toe to toe. And I remember, I think it was in game 2 that they were talking to Paul Maurice, who's a coach, veteran coach, has a lot of playoff experience. And they interviewed him and they said, Coach, are you happy with how your team is playing? He goes, oh, I'm very happy with how our team's playing because we realize we can go toe to toe with these guys. Now, when I heard it, it's like, okay, coach speak, everything else. But you know what? In retrospect, he knew he had something there, and he knew some of the weaknesses that Boston had that could be exploited, and he felt he had the team to do it. So from that standpoint, you know what? They belong here. And, if they actually end up winning it, I can't say anybody that's a real hockey fan would be surprised. You'd be surprised in the bigger picture of trying to look at it. But in terms of how they've played since the playoffs started, that would be something. And so I think that's where the odds makers line comes into play here.
I agree with you. It's not about what went on through the 82-game regular season. It's about how teams are currently playing right now at this time in this Stanley Cup final. And since falling behind 3-1 in in the Boston series, Florida has won 11 of 12 games. Think about that. That's crazy. And they've won 8 straight on the road. And Bobrovsky's playing tremendous. To me, I am going to go with Florida in the series. I just think that the odds makers are begging you to take Las Vegas. Now, I think Doug is going to be on the other side. That's okay if we disagree. But I'm just telling you, my thought process is I just think there's value here with Florida, the way they're playing. They've won 11 of 12. They've won 8 straight on the road. They got a hot goaltender. Aiden Hill has been hot on the other side. Yes, they got I think that the combination of Bobrovsky being a veteran, okay, as opposed to Aiden Hill, who's a youngster, in this high pressure of a situation, I give the edge to Florida there. That's me. I also like the way Florida has played since that Boston series, since falling behind. They've just been tremendous. And how could you not at least seriously consider the underdog in a series if they've won 8 straight games on the road? I mean, that could be the difference in the series. Who can post the most road wins? Because it's proven both of these teams have played very good on the road, especially Florida. So I'm going to have a slight lean on the series price. And listen, folks, here's my strategy when it comes to futures or a series pick. I play very conservatively on a series pick. So in other words, when I take Florida, it's going to be amount to 20% of what I normally play on a game-to-game basis. Why do I do that? It's not a lack of confidence. It's strict money management, because what I don't want to do is box myself into a corner where I make a sizable bet on Florida to win the series. And then as the series progresses, I shy away from taking Las Vegas at all, even though all the statistics and the numbers and what I've seen points toward them doing that. So I don't want to box myself in where I have to take Florida throughout the whole series or go against them only if they're up 2-0 or 3-0. So that's my strategy when it comes to series picks. Doug, I'll let you take it over and enlighten the folks on your strategy when it comes to this specific series anyway.
Yeah, well, first of all, I agree with what you say. This to me series. I mean, there's a reason these numbers are what they are. So there's not that much separation before the season or before the series, starts. That is visible. So again, I agree. I think a low. If you want to bet it, go ahead. Just make a lower type wager, okay? And as Ross said, don't get caught into then you feel like you have to make picks. It's independent of what the game by game is. So that's how you should do it. Now, for me, I'm looking at this series. I agree with Ross, but I'm gonna just go the other side. But I think it's a slight advantage. I'm gonna take Vegas, and here's why: is that thing number one? Even though this is an extremely small sample size, in the history of the NHL, the Florida has been off for 9 days. That is the 4th longest break of any team that there has ever been. One of them goes back to 1919, and that only is going to be important to some of you that remember 3 years ago, because when we had COVID, of course, one of the things that came up in 1919 was the flu and everything.
The Spanish flu, yes.
And so from that standpoint, the series was actually canceled after 5 games. Now, there's 2 other examples of that, the things that have gone on, is that in 2019, Boston had a longer break, as did the 2003 Anaheim Ducks, and both those teams lost in 7 games. Okay, so that's just something that I'm throwing out there for Vegas. The other thing that I mean, the ability of Florida to come back has been remarkable. Okay, seen it time and time again. But the thing that has caught my eye in this entire series, when Vegas has had a dud game or didn't play well, their very next game, they have been able to lift their play to play their absolute very best in the very next game. And there was no greater example of that than in Game 6 at Dallas. They could have wrapped up the series against Dallas at home. They started fiddling around the middle of the second period, and they ended up losing. Well, what did they do? They come home, everybody's saying, hey, this is things going 7 games. Well, guess what? They came out with a vengeance. They destroyed Dallas and beat them 6-0. Okay. And I'm not saying that's the only reason. I'm just saying that I just have noticed the level of play. They have another gear. Not saying that Florida doesn't, and they've been super resilient. So those factors for me put me on Vegas to win the series, but I'm thinking 7 games, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me whatsoever. So there you go. Doug likes Vegas in the series. I like Florida in the series. That's okay. Hey, we're not always going to agree, and we're not trying to two-side you folks. We're giving There's one series to pick from. There's one game to pick from. This is what we've been going through on our shows with the NBA Finals. You know, Doug, it's like somebody's going to disagree with the other guy.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
now, hey, Ross, I'm gonna add a little levity to the show now, okay? If you don't mind.
Sure.
I did not tell you this,
Absolutely.
but I saw this today on Twitter, so I just wanted to. So for those that never wondered about this, okay, I'm gonna fill you in. So you got the Stanley Cup, right? So you understand the shape of the cup. Well, guess what? How many beers, 12-ounce beers, does a Stanley Cup hold?
Oh.
Okay. The answer is 17. Okay.
Wow.
So I just want to enlighten everybody. So it tells you how deep it is.
Yeah.
Okay. For one thing. And so, yes, 17 beers is exactly what a Stanley Cup will hold. And that's why you see with those guys that are, after they win it, they're drinking out of it, they're this and that, and they all end up being drunk. Well, that might have something to do with it.
Well, that and they don't use American beer. They use Canadian beer. And for those of you not familiar with Canadian beer, man, I just talked about it in the last show. I'm in Western New York, folks. So I'm about an hour and 20 minutes from the Canadian border. Actually, where the Buffalo Sabres arena is, it's a mere 5 miles to the Canadian border right there. It's just there. And we used to, as kids, go up because, you know, here the beer was weak at the time, and go up and get Canadian beer, 6.5% alcohol. And then there used to be a beer called Triple X, 7% alcohol. And the difference is you eliminate all the preservatives in the beer. It's so clean tasting, Doug.
Okay.
And I could tell you, I would be fine until I finished the third beer. And within 5 minutes, a whole different perspective came upon me.
You were enlightened, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I looked at the world much differently.
I
didn't seem to bother me as much, Doug. You know, there was no stress. So I just thought I'd share that. And I'm sure with a lot of the players being Canadian, not as many as there used to be, because it's become more and more an international game. I'm thinking it's Canadian beer in there, but who knows? If they win in Florida, win in Vegas, they're not an hour and 10 minutes from the Canadian border like I am, pal.
Right.
So anyway,
there you go.
There's something morally wrong with two warm weather climates playing for the Stanley Cup.
No, it's updated. Well, hey, you know what the best thing is?
Yeah.
One of these teams, for the first time, will have won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying neither are deserving, Doug, but the way I grew up, I'm a traditionalist.
Oh, I know. Original six stuff is great to talk about, but there's a reason why it's original. It's not today.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's my story and I'm sticking with it.
Well, when we started this podcast 3 years ago, we were the original two. So
there we go.
We can't talk about just us two now because we've expanded since.
There you go.
The rest of the guys.
So
your point is well taken,
Ross. Thank you.
Yeah. Anyway, Doug, what do you got coming up this weekend? Tell the folks how you've been doing of late, or anything of note you want to bring to their attention. And you can find him at docsports.com, and he'll tell you what he's got going on.
Sure. Well, as I've already explained, I'm not going to have a big play in the NHL for game one, but if things go right, I'm looking for game two. And my 6-unit or higher plays right now are on a 17-8 run. Okay, 68%. So I'm not promising a 6-unit play for game two, but it's certainly a possibility as we sit here today. So, and if there's other opportunities, I'm going to dive in for those. Major League Baseball, I am turning a corner, and I can, and Ross, we've talked about this. Not only am I turning a corner, I'm turning a mental corner. All of a sudden, there's a little bit different way of looking at these games, and they're starting to have more clarity to me. And so I would not be surprised if I start to go on a run here, like I have done each of the last 2 years. Not necessarily right at this time, but right around this time. And so I'm excited, for that opportunity to come up. I'm not gonna bore Ross with the USFL again. It's just that it's coming. I'll have a play.
Yeah.
And WNBA action also. And I had the under for the first. I'm sorry, I had Denver for the first half on the other day. Takes me to 18-12, 60% on recent plays, 48-33 going back to February. So so I'm looking forward to something
48-33 overall in the NBA.
In the NBA,
okay,
sorry.
I was going to say you make a hell of a lot more
going back to February.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking at game two.
That's
Ross, that's my story. What's yours?
I got a big story, Doug, but that's just a shade under 60%, if I'm not mistaken.
That one is correct.
48-33. That's pretty damn good. considering the amount of time. Yeah, the NBA postseason, folks. I don't know what more I could say. Like Doug says, it's going great. I can't explain it, other than the fact that I've been very good the last 2 years in the NBA playoffs. This year, 39-22, another winner last night with Denver. Not only 39-22 in the NBA postseason this year, but also current runs of 13-4 and 22-8 in the NBA playoffs. My NBA 10-star top plays, 32-16 with my last 48. That's not just in the playoffs. That dates back to the regular season. Not a lot of 10-star top plays. That's my top rated selections. But when I do put those out in the NBA, I've hit 67% of them. So, and also overall, a all sports run right now after my 2-0 last night. I had the New York Mets on the run line yesterday. Doug had him on the money line, by the way, cashing in there, plus 110 for me. And then I had Denver last night, 2-0. That makes me 24-14 with my last 38 picks overall. So a lot of good things from Doug Upstone over at DocSports.com and Ross Benjamin at RBWins.com. Remember, folks, these free picks are great, but our best picks go up on our website. They're for sale, and they're very affordable, and it's mostly not out of anybody's price range. I would highly advise, if you are serious about winning with our track records, and everything is documented. We're not making these records up. We can give you 2 or 3 sites that will document these records for you if called upon. DocSports.com for Doug Upstone, Ross Benjamin at RBWins.com. Folks, don't forget, if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, take a second to do so. It costs you absolutely nothing. There's no hidden agenda. There's no subscription plan. You're just privy to myself, Doug, Jesse Shule, and Sean Higgs. 4 guys that have been around for over 2 decades in this business. And you know what? Longevity speaks volumes in this business. We've seen a lot of people come and go. We're still here. We're still winning. We're still making money, and we're making you happy. And these podcasts are great, but click that subscribe button. You'll see the Winner's Circle logo right there in the bottom right-hand corner of the page. Click on that. Click to subscribe. And then while you're there in your YouTube settings, hit your notification bell. You'll be alerted immediately upon any of our Winner's Circle sports betting podcasts going up on this Winner's Circle sports betting channel. Boy, try to say that 10 times in a row. In any event, for Doug Upstone and Ross Benjamin, we'd like to wish each and every one of you a very, very fantastic weekend. Be safe, have fun, enjoy your family, and we'll see you again on Monday right here on the Winner's Circle Sports Betting Podcast on the Winner's Circle Sports Betting channel. And don't forget, like Jesse Shule always says, smash that like button. Until the next time, folks, take care.